Good evening, or afternoon, or morning, depending on what time you are joining us or what time it is where you are. This is Marcie Thomas, and I am the founder of Brown Girl Collective, and of course, your host for Live Well Sister. If this is your first time here, just to give you a little background, or you may have seen it in the introduction, this is a space where I get together with wonderful Black women practitioners and experts in a variety of areas, whether it's spiritual life, self-care, our relationships, our careers, our money, our service to the community, and then, of course, the joy of living. Those are the areas that we love to talk about in this space, and tonight is no different. Actually, my lovely guest this evening covers several of those areas, actually, because she is a very powerful woman who is doing great things in the world of healing here in the Atlanta, Georgia area, where I actually happen to live as well. And we know each other. I'm going to call her a friend because we've had some good conversations over the last several months. So I will call her a friend, and it's such an honor for me to have her here with me this evening. So our special guest is Dr. Kaylee Arnold, who is a 200-hour Yoga Alliance registered yoga teacher, Pilates instructor, and Reiki Master Practitioner here in Atlanta, as I stated. She specializes in bringing mindfulness and stress relief through meditation, yoga, and Reiki energy healing. She has also received her master's degree in Ayurvedic. I always have to say this, so Ayurvedic. I always have to say that slow to get it right. And integrative medicine from the esteemed Maharishi International University. She actually began her career in medicine as an orthopedic surgeon. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And she just understands from her own personal experience and working with other professionals that a lot of folks are just stressed out, and we need these wonderful healing modalities to help us find peace and serenity in order to reach our optimal potential. So I know that's a lot, that's a mouthful, but she is very much worth it. So I do want to welcome to the room Dr. Kaylee Arnold. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome. Yes. I said this is my friend, y'all.
Yes.
Yes,
sure.
and yes,
we
go
broke
ahead.
bread together, so we're friends, right?
Yes. And I did not mention the name of the business. Forgive me. That's Sati Yoga and Wellness of Atlanta. That's the name of the business, and you can see all of the pertinent information scrolling there. So once again, welcome. We have been talking about this for a while, so it is indeed a pleasure to actually finally see it happen. So
yes. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we're going to get right into it because your life is so rich and you have so many things that are powerful to share. So let's start at the beginning. Now, of course, I mentioned that you were an orthopedic surgeon, but prior to you doing that, obviously you had a desire to help and to serve people. So when did that first kind of happen for you, and what led you to pursue medicine?
It's interesting. I've always felt like I was a healer. I was always very an empathetic child, and just was just very in tune and very nurturing. And it's interesting that on my mother's side, my great grandmother was she's Native American, and she was a medicine woman.
Oh, wow.
Very spiritual. Yes. And then my grandmother was an RN, and she was the first African-American registered nurse to work in a private hospital in Alabama.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I think it was just kind of in me. And, growing up in a typical Black middle class family where education is, the most important thing, when I walk around telling it, I like to help people, I want to heal. Of course, that meant medical school. I didn't know of any other form of healing other than what was around me. And it was interesting. It was actually through my sports. So I grew up a competitive dancer. I grew up an elite gymnast. And so I was in and out of sports medicine clinics with various injuries. And I really loved it. And so that was my first introduction to what I might want to do. And I had the really good fortune of attending the same high school as a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon.
Mm.
Unfortunately, he just passed. His name is Dr. Freddie Fu, but he was a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon. He did amazing things with ACL reconstruction, but his son was a year under me. And I was actually at UPMC Sports Medicine Center for an injury, and I was talking to him. He's like, "Oh, you go to Shady Side." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm interested." And so he allowed me to kind of like volunteer at the clinic. And so every summer during college, I would come home and volunteer at the clinic and just shadow and all those things. And I was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to do orthopedics. I liked the idea of fixing things, you know,
Mm.
and I liked being around people who are active and like athletes and things like that, like myself. So that's kind of what sparked that inside of me. And so obviously I went to college, went to medical school, matched orthopedic surgery. I was very tunnel vision. I was literally like that very ambitious person, like, this is what I
Right.
want to do. This is what I'm going to do, so I
Right.
was like, yeah. And I just wasn't even looking at anything else. And, I finished my residency. I stayed at a fellowship in foot and ankle reconstructive surgery and then ended up in Atlanta for private practice. And, there was good and bad in that.
Right.
I loved surgery. I liked helping people, but there's a whole other slew of things that come along with, practicing medicine, which I
Right.
don't think any doctor is prepared for because they don't talk about this in medical school or residency. It's just kind of like dropped on you the business of medicine, which is really not necessarily the prettiest business. Every industry has a dark side. And
Right.
I think that just I think it might have affected me more so because I was such an empath and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the fact that I wasn't really helping people in the way that I knew that I could fully. And so that just didn't sit right with me. So I think from there, I started exploring other types of healing that were out there. Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense in knowing where you are now. So, I see the connections. I can see the connection. So, going through that, and and you and I have talked about it before, just being in that environment and not necessarily liking the things you see go on. And if any of you have watched any of the previous shows, a couple of weeks ago, I had actually had someone who we were talking about. Actually, it was just last week. We were talking about Black maternal health, and kind of
Mhm.
the same thing. It's like you see a lot of stuff that's not right. People aren't getting, what they need. And then I guess for you specifically, being an empath, it's like that's not working for you, not being able to really help people. So at what point for you personally did you start to discover like the yoga and some of the other things that you're doing now?
Well, I'll start with Pilates. I started Pilates before I started yoga because, again, it was a fitness and I kind of really was into that. And I remember when I was in residency, one of the neurosurgery residents' girlfriend was a Pilates teacher. And we became really good friends, and she would give me lessons for like $20.
Oh, wow.
Which I didn't really realize at the time, like how nice she was being to me. And she
Right.
was from San Francisco, but we were just friends. And she'd be like, "Oh, just buy me a drink next time we go out, whatever." But I really fell in love with Pilates then. And I continued that when I came to Atlanta. And it was kind of like just a physical outlet for me. And it's a way that keeps me strong, keeps me limber. keeps me aligned. And so Pilates started with me, before. And then I believe 2005 is when I started my yoga path. My residency, unfortunately, was a very hostile environment. And I think it took like a really serious toll on my mental health, even though I didn't really notice it. Well, I don't think I noticed it as much as the people around me did, because it was, I would take my frustration and anger out of the hospital, and it kind of spilled into my interpersonal relationships. And I would never forget, I had a birthday, and a bunch of my girlfriends gave me an envelope for my birthday. It was a card, and inside was a gift card for a yoga studio. And I was like, I don't need yoga. Like this woohoo, whatever stuff. Like, I'm not. Mm-mm. And they were like, you need yoga. So I started going. And, initially I was drawn to the physical aspect because, I was a gymnast. So doing the postures like the headstands and the handstands, I felt like a rock star because I already do it because I was a gymnast my whole life. But then, my schedule was so erratic as a resident. So I would just kind of pop into class whenever I could, not necessarily knowing what the class was. And so I ended up in this one class, and we were just sitting there. Like it wasn't a flow. We were just sitting there in these deep stretches for felt like hours and just breathing. And I was like, this is so silly. Why am I sitting here? Like, this is, I'm not getting a workout, And then I'll never forget it. We were in a position called fire log, which is double pigeon with your legs, your shins are stacked like this. And it's a really big hip opener. And all of a sudden I started feeling this heat. It started in my hips, obviously, because I was stretching them, and the heat just started coming up, bubbling up. And I just felt like my whole body was on fire. And then all of a sudden I felt like I was about to explode, and I started bursting out in tears, like ugly crying, like in the middle of class, just tears. And it was a true catharsis for me. And I didn't realize like everything that I was holding on to was like coming out of me. It was like a cleanse. And so after class, I talked to the teacher, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. And she explained to me what happens in that practice, which is called yin yoga, which is now my favorite practice of yoga, that, we hold energy in certain parts of our body. And in the hips, particularly, it's believed that we hold energy like anger and jealousy and shame and guilt. And so when we do hip opener, you can have a release of emotions. And that's basically what I was having. And, it kind of scared me, but then I kind of was addicted to it. So then I kept going back. And that was kind of like my spark of finding something that was healing, that was not medicine, that was not a workout, that was really a spiritual kind of phenomenon that was coming from the inside out that I had never experienced before. So that was the start of my yoga journey. And I continued yoga ever since then, exploring, vinyasa, restorative yoga, yoga nidra, everything I could get my hands on between that time until when I ultimately went to get my yoga teacher training in 2017.
Yeah, and I just love the way you talked about that. When I came to one of your classes, I can't remember which one it was, but you were talking about like the opening of the hips. And I want to say you said something about Black women carrying things in our hip region.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, because some people might not know what that means. We know we have the hips. You can't see mine right now. Yes, I have the hips.
Well, I mean, it's really it's really the same. It's really the same phenomenon. It's just I think for Black women, it tends to be heightened because we tend to be the bearers of everything more so. Right. We tend to be the matriarchs. We tend to be the nurturers. We tend to be sometimes a single mom, or the one daughter that has to take care of the family or whatever it is. It seems like a lot of times a Black woman has to really hold a lot on their plates, and we don't have. for two things. A, we don't feel like we can do the release because it's like a fear. It's like almost like a weakness. I have to keep going on for my kids or whomever. So we don't allow ourselves to have that release, whether it's a good cry or meditation or whatever it is. And so if you don't release that, it does get trapped in the body. And the hips are where, you tend to hold negative energy, right? And it could also be, unfortunately, from trauma. And trauma is everything from being bullied on the playground to physical abuse, or just growing up poor or experiencing racism. All that is trauma. And, we have like these micro traumas and all these things. And if we don't take the time or the space to find a way to release that, it gets stored in the body and it manifests as pain. It manifests as, back pain or cramps or fibroids or heart disease and all these things, like when you don't release that energy within you. And so I think it's extremely important for especially women of color to have an outlet to release these, we call them anchors or, attachments that are in our body that we have not either recognized or acknowledged, or we have, and we just haven't had the space to let them go.
Yes, that means really a lot just to hear you say that and describe that, because one of the things that you do, because I remember when I first came to you, I'm like, I'm not good at yoga. I said that, and you're like, there's no such thing as not being good at yoga. And that's because when you go online and you see, all the people who are on Instagram and, all these different places, number one, they're not a lot that look like us. Yeah. Especially if you're a person who is of some size. I mean, there are a few, that you see out there, but by and large, if you're actually physically going to a class in most yoga studios, you're not seeing a lot of people who may look like us or be larger bodied. And so, I get in, I'm doing whatever it is. I'm like, I'm not good at this, but I love that your take on yoga is, well, it's more about what's happening, the mindfulness and things like that. So I want you to explain it, because of course I'm not going to say it right.
Well, so again, like I was saying, my experience with yoga that got me hooked was the spiritual release that I had. It was different than the sort of short-term burst of release I have when I would work out, like kickboxing or whatever it was. And what I know now was that it was me being connected to my thoughts, to my breath, and to what was physically going on in my body. Because a lot of us walk around completely disconnected. And I didn't really understand that until I started teaching movement, just how many regular people are disconnected they have a huge disconnection between their mind and body. And these are people who are highly educated, highly accomplished individuals. I remember teaching Pilates, and Pilates is different from yoga because, we aren't on the equipment, because I'm not doing it with them. I'm just standing there and I'm telling them what to do. And so I'm literally looking at people and I'm saying, okay, bend your elbows, and they lift their right leg up. And I'm like, what? Because it's a mindfulness for me to say, bend your elbows, curl your head and shoulders up, deepen through your belly. Your brain has to process that, and you have to tell your body what to do. And that's why things like Pilates and yoga are mindfulness exercises, because you're increasing that mind-body connection. And what that does is when you start to increase that connection with your mind and your body, you are able to be in touch with when things go out of balance, right? So feeling like, after I eat whatever, quinoa, my stomach hurts. Maybe I should not eat quinoa. It starts to develop into other things, or I'm having this heaviness in my chest, or, I feel like, one side of my body is longer than the other, just in these little things. Because what happens is I've seen it on the medical side, is that people come in with these injuries, and I'm like, did you not notice something was happening like months ago? But no, because we just keep pushing and going and pushing and going, because that's what society has us do. You're rewarded by you kind of suppressing and keeping it going, which is actually very detrimental to not only your physical, but your mental health, right? It's not something to be commended, right? What you want to commend is having increased mind body connection. And so, what I was seeing in Atlanta was that once again, yoga was kind of being turned into just another workout.
Right.
Let's get hot, let's get sweaty, let's get skinny, let's get strong. And I'm like, okay, that is like this much benefit of yoga, right? The major benefit of yoga is building resilience on the mat, right? Being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and taking that resilience off the mat so you can deal with difficult situations. For example, I'll give you a really funny example, not funny, but a really prime example of how mindfulness changed me. So, I've been meditating and practicing mindfulness in yoga for about 18 years now. And
Mhm.
I was in just a very minor car accident on 20 West, getting on the 75/85. And my partner was in the car with me, and it was raining, and three cars ahead of me slammed on the brakes, and then everybody
Mhm.
slam, slam, slam. And so I slammed the brakes just in time so I wouldn't hit the person in front of me. But I looked in the rearview mirror and I knew the person behind me was not going to be able to stop.
Right.
And so I just eased my foot off the pedal so it wouldn't be so jarring. And I just kind of took it, and I was like, okay. And honestly, my heart rate barely elevated. I was so
Mm.
focused. I was breathing. I was using the higher functions of my brain to be like, okay, let's get out on this side. Let me call the studio and tell them I'm going to be late. Let me call Trip. I was just thinking of all of these things. Meanwhile, my partner, who was in the passenger side, is freaking out. He's like, oh my
Mm.
God, oh my God. And the person who hit me is freaking out. And I was like, it's okay. I was able to just process. It wasn't like I didn't understand what was happening, but I was just in a better headspace to deal what was going on. Had that been me prior to yoga, I would have been like the other two, freaking out.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And so these are the benefits of yoga that people are missing out on because they're trying to get skinny and sweaty and whatever, instead of sitting there and breathing and connecting. So that was what I wanted to instill in my studio was
Right.
the mindfulness aspect, which is, I feel this is the most beneficial aspect of these practices. That's what you can continue to do throughout your day. That's going to improve your overall health and your lifestyle, and also the idea of inclusivity. Because
Yes.
again, I've been teaching for a long time, and I have friends who are like, oh, I want to do yoga, but I'm not in shape, or I can't do this or I can't do that, or people are pregnant, or I have a lot of private clients who are in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s.
Wow.
People with autoimmune, yes, I do. People with autoimmune disorders. So it's like all of these people have been left out of
Mhm.
receiving these benefits because there's nowhere for them to go. If you're 70 years old, you're not going to go down to like Vibe Tribe and sweat and work out. Like you can't, you know what I
Right.
mean? Or if you
Right.
have hypertension or multiple sclerosis, whatever it is. So what I was seeing is that a lot of studios had an inclusive language, like everyone's welcome, but you go
Right.
in and it's 98 degrees
Right.
and they're doing this fast flow. So their practice is not inclusive. And
Right.
it just shuts out a whole huge subset of people who can't practice yoga. So my main goal in opening my studio was a place that, I made it non-heated so everyone can practice. And I love the fact that my Tuesdays and Thursday morning class has become the retiree class. Like everyone in there
All
is
right.
like these, and I love it. I have, little mamas, pregnant women. I have two women, unfortunately, who are going through chemo, just
Mm.
different, things. Different people are coming who are like, gosh, I'm so grateful for this space because, there was nowhere else I really felt comfortable practicing. And I also had people tell me, I don't really feel like I fit in other places because I am a larger size. And at
Right.
Sati, I feel welcome. At Sati, I feel safe. I feel heard. And so that was kind of my main, I guess, incentive of creating a studio. So it wasn't just another trendy cute hot yoga studio. It was more like coming back to what's really beneficial and bringing it to everyone.
Right, and that's so important. Well, we do have a couple of comments I wanted to share.
Okay.
One, yes, true, we will work through so much pain. Tara, you are right about that. Full disclosure, I have an ankle issue that I've had for a very long time. I'm finally trying to figure out what's going on with that. So, but yeah, I mean, there'll be times where I stand up and I get this pain, and I think, oh, okay, it's just this pain. But then it goes on and on. Certain times I'm working out, my foot will swell, just different things that are going on. Like, I know something's not right, but taking my time and just kind of dealing with it and working through it. But it is important to get those things checked out. Actually, we have a few comments from Cheryl. She says she did chair yoga before.
Yes.
She doesn't do regular because it's easier on her joints. She loves the breathing exercises. Yeah, and actually, if y'all hang around, we're going to do a little exercise before we finish. So it is a great way to get centered. Yes, yes, yes. And then the thing of going to the classes, it can be very intimidating. I too have thought I wouldn't be able to do the poses because I'm not in shape enough.
Yeah, that's a common sentiment that I get with people when they come and they're like, "Oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought." Even when we did the Sigma Gamma Row, remember?
Right. There were a lot of new ladies in there.
They were like, "Oh, it wasn't so bad. It wasn't so scary." I'm like, "No, it's just yoga."
Yes, having a space where you can do yoga and not feel fat shamed is great. Yes. Yes. And that, I love about you, well, you just have a very calming energy about yourself anyway, but, just in the way that you teach your classes, you specifically, that's why I'll admit there are other people there, but I'm always looking for the classes that you're teaching.
I have some very amazing teachers. Speaking of that, I was very intentional about my hiring. So
Yes.
the majority of my staff are women of color. I have one Black man, and I just hired one more. So I have 3 Caucasian women, but everybody else is a woman of color, and I have different sizes of teachers. And I even have one teacher that has a small disability, because I really feel like they're saying, representation matters. And you see a teacher who's teaching that looks like you, not just in color, but in size. It's like, oh, okay, this space is for me too. And so I think it's important to have that representation within the teaching staff.
It absolutely is, because I come there and I feel welcome. And as you mentioned, I went there with my sorors, Sigma Gamma Rho sorors, and we had a great time. And a lot of us are like, we're going to go back. We just have to figure out what day and all of that, and get you to teach again. I'm just kidding. Dr. Kaylee, but yes, they just really enjoyed it, and it's something that we want to do. But you have been talking a lot about the mindfulness piece, and from what you have taught us and what you have learned, traditionally yoga was more about the mindfulness piece. Please expound upon that.
Well, so yoga was started over 5,000 years ago in India by sages, and the only reason why how they kind of derived yoga was they were trying to find different stretches that would allow them to sit and meditate all day. That was how yoga started. Okay. It started so you can get in a position so you can sit and breathe. So again, yoga has 3 main parts. So the asana is the physical, which most people know. Asana means posture, pose, right? That's what people think of when they think of yoga, right? And then there's pranayama, which is breath work, right? So all the different breathing techniques, because breathing techniques are healing in themselves. In fact, we just had a breath work workshop at the studio on Saturday, and one of our teachers is a clinical yoga therapist, and went through an hour and a half of different breathing techniques that are actually healing. And she broke down the science of how these different breathing techniques actually can help to heal you both physically and mentally. It helps with anxiety, helps with depression, blood pressure, all of these things. And the last part is meditation, right? So when you think of yoga, I tell people I have a daily yoga practice. Does it mean I get on my mat and do my sun salutations every day? No, but I do get up every morning and I meditate. That's yoga. You know,
Mm.
I'll write in my gratitude journal, right? That's yoga. I will might do a walking meditation. That's yoga, right? So there are so many different iterations of yoga out there. So then when people think of, like you were talking about on Instagram, all the girls bending in half, like, how much benefit are you getting from that? And usually, like when I did used to teach those power classes, because I've taught yoga for, 7 years now, and I
Mhm.
did teach power yoga and all those things. And even when I was in those classes, I would tell people it's not about the pose at the end. We used to call it, we're going to build to your peak pose. And it would be like, whatever, birds of paradise and blah, 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 whatever it is. And I would tell them all this. Sometimes I would even tell them what the peak pose is because I didn't want them to get fixated on it. Right.
Mhm.
I would just start to do the work because the work to get into the pose is where you get the benefit. Right. So the lengthening of your hamstrings or the opening of your chest or the strengthening of your core. Right. So you can get to that pose. That journey was where you got the work. When you get to the pose, you're in it for 10 seconds. Like how much benefit are you getting for the
Right.
10 seconds as opposed to the 50 minutes you took to do the work to get there? Right. So it's not so much about that. It's really about how can I increase my mind and body connection? Right. And that's why I talk about, the breath. Your breath is prana that translates to life force, literally. Right. And I tell people, I want you to almost feel like you can't move unless you're breathing. Right.
Mm.
Every movement in sync with your breath. Inhale, lift the arms, exhale, lower the arms, right? Just to find that mind body connection with moving with your breath, right? And then I tend to like to teach now, so the big power flow classes is more mindful movement. So we hold, warrior two for a little bit longer. And I want you to feel what you're working in warrior two. Like, what are the muscles that you're feeling? You're feeling your arms, you're feeling your shoulder blades, you're feeling your abdominals pull in, you're feeling the strength of your thigh, you're feeling your glute as you press back, right? Tap into that. And how does it feel different from the other side? But without holding judgment, and just think about, oh, maybe my left hip is a little tighter than my right hip. Why is that? Do I stand on my left side more? Right. And start just
Mm.
thinking about what you're doing in your daily life that is showing up in your yoga practice. And then when you do that, when you go throughout your day, you'll notice, oh, am I slouching? Am I leaning to the right? Am I putting a heavy bag on this right shoulder at my time? Am I doing
Mhm.
right? So you start to have this awareness that you didn't necessarily have. So that for me is one of the many beautiful things that you can get from breaking it down, doing a more mindful movement, having a more mindful yoga practice, as opposed to like just kind of going through the moves and making it almost more like a dance or a workout, you know.
Yeah, you said something there because one of the things, well, a lot of people who've watched before already know this. Obviously, you know this. And in my day job, I work for Girl Trek, which is about
Mhm.
walking, and we do talk about walking meditation. So
Yes,
it's,
yes,
I do know that that is something that is very important. Just to walk and be, at one with what's happening around you, and things of that nature. But we were talking the other day in a class for the staff, we were talking about some of our activities of daily living. And
hmm
what you were just talking about made me think of that our ability to stretch or move or bend or whatever. Yes, I mean, we need to be able to do it, but it's not so much about a fancy pose. It's just, hey, so that I can bend down and pick something up off of the floor, or I can reach up and get something out of a cabinet. So since
right.
you do work with some, variety of ages and things like that, is that something that you find with maybe some of your more mature students that they're trying to build strength in those areas?
Yes, the main thing I work on my older clients is balance,
Mm.
right? Because that's what really goes as you get older, and that's what can lead to falls and hip fractures and wrist fractures and bad things. So anytime we do balances, I'm like, what are the muscles that we're using right now, right? And then I'll work on strengthening those muscles because it's usually your stabilizer muscles are on the outside of your glutes, outside of your hips, right? So we'll do some, some movement to kind of work those, activate those muscles, and also drawing in the core, right? And then finding something we call our dristi, something that's not moving to focus on so you can balance. But, as much as they lament with the balance
Mm-hmm.
every class because it's challenging, but
It
they
is.
know it's good for them, right? So that's something I focus on the most with my older clients is balance, just because I know also as being an orthopedic surgeon, how
Yes.
many hip fractures I had to fix. Little old lady fell and broke her hip. And it can be, with a really older population, 80 plus, like that can be, you know, the most detrimental thing that leads to, bed rest, it leads to pneumonia, and then sometimes, that's it. So I really focus on balance. And then, of course, flexibility and just keeping things moving. Like I said, my two oldest clients, I have one that's 80, my private clients, one that just turned 80, and she's been a private Pilates client with me for probably 7 years now. And another one I just started working with about 3 months ago, who's 82. And they
Wow.
are phenomenal. And it's just amazing. They are a true testament to if you just continue to move and breathe and just be diligent about that practice. I mean, they're astounding. The things that they're doing, holding planks, like,
Oh,
yes.
wow.
I
I'm
mean, they're
jealous. My mom and I were talking about planks the other day. I'm like, ooh, I can't do a plank. But my upper body has always been my place where I struggled with strength. Picking something up, that's one thing, but like holding my own body weight, like I could never climb ropes or, pole dancing is out of the question, so because I just being able to lift my body like that or
yeah,
hold my body in that way. So that is one of my goals for this year, to be able to like do a plank or some of those, weight, personal weight bearing exercises.
yeah, yes.
So
I love that.
that's the thing. But yeah, no pole dancing, no climbing ropes, no monkey bars, none of that.
Pole dancing is hard. I remember years ago, a friend of mine got me into that, and we were doing these pole fitness classes. And here I am, a former gymnast and all these things, super strong upper body. But I mean, that class would beat me up every time I went. I mean, my forearms were sore, my lats were sore, my inner thighs were bruised from clamping the pole. I mean, it was it was
Yeah, it's
hard
no
work.
joke.
It
It
was
is
hard
no
work.
joke. It's hard work. So, don't judge the people who do it, because that's hard
Oh,
work. That
I
takes
have
a lot
utmost
of.
respect for all of them.
Yes, and strength and strength. Well, I have a question about the Ayurvedic medicine, but before we go there, talk a little bit about Reiki, because we hear things. Some of us have heard about Reiki. Some people don't even know what Reiki is. I've never done it, so I need to probably get with you on that, because I want to experience what Reiki energy healing session is. But just
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that.
So Reiki is basically the universal energy, right? So in Chinese medicine, it's called like your chi. And basically, as a Reiki practitioner, you're taking the universal energy, and I'm basically a vessel, and it comes through me. And I use it along with these certain techniques to heal. And it's a massage almost, but you're not touching the person at all. And it's a very intuitive practice, a very and you probably we actually all have the gift of Reiki within us, but
Mm.
it's channeling your empathy, right? You're really tapping into the energy of the other person. And so when you do it, it's very relaxing for the client. They're not quite asleep, but they're in a very, very deeply relaxed state, almost like a yoga nidra. And I start to just scan my hand just lightly over them, or I might have like we call butterfly touch, like a feathering touch. And what I'm feeling is the energy that's moving through the body. And I don't want to say I'm looking for, but I'm just drawing awareness if I feel any blocks, right? So as you probably, I don't know if you guys know, but we talk about the chakras in yoga and in Reiki and Ayurveda, right? So we have 7 main chakras, right? So you have the root chakra that starts at the base of the spine, the sacral chakra in the lower belly. You have your solar plexus that's right around the belly button, right? And you have your heart chakra, throat chakra, third eye, and then the crown, right? And each chakra is kind of associated with Actually, they're associated with something called a ganglion plexus, which is also a lumbar, in the body. But they're associated with certain energies, like sacral chakra. Like a blockage in the sacral chakra can mean reproductive issues. It can mean lack of fertility, not just physically in birth, but fertility of mind. So writer's block, right? Lack of creativity, lack of being able to give and receive pleasure, decrease sexual libido, like all these things that come from sacral chakra. And so what I do is I will scan, and it's very interesting. It's different every time, but sometimes I'll just feel like my hand will stop, and I'll just feel either heaviness or a change in temperature, or something will draw my awareness to stop there. And if I feel that, and let's say it's over the sacral chakra, then I will do a couple of things to try and balance that chakra while I'm still there, to see if I can. And it's usually either a couple of mantras that are for the sacral chakra. I might lay a stone over the sacral chakra, which is usually orange, like an amber or citrine over the area. Or I'll do a little aromatherapy. There are certain scents that go with the sacral chakra, or I might even have them recite something. And if I can't get it cleared, I will send that person home with quote unquote a prescription for blocking their sacral chakra. So it might be a meditation. It might be, getting some with your crystals. It could be aromatherapy. It could be, many things. And it also, not just with chakras, but it also can deal with physical pain. So I've had Reiki clients who have had recovering from surgery in various areas, recovering from chemotherapy, various things, or some people who are just sad, going through a divorce, and they're out of balance. So it's a very beautiful practice. It's just something that, honestly, when I actually had Reiki the first time and I was going through a divorce, my friend, recommended it to me, and I wasn't open to it. And I was just kind of like, this is silly. I was still very much, in medicine at the time. And I was just kind of like, I'm good with yoga and meditation, but this right here, like, this is weird. Like,
you're going too far.
I was like, I don't know what this is. And then when I went to Bali for my yoga teacher training, one of my yoga instructors who was leading the training was a Reiki master. And she was just offering, if you want to do Reiki. And I think at that point, like, I was an open book. Like, I'm in Bali, I'm at this yoga ashram, like, I'm just here for all the things. Like, I was in true receptive mode. And I literally had just like this visceral response to her Reiki session. I mean, I saw colors, I saw patterns, I felt tingling, I felt like all of these things that I didn't feel the first time. And that's when I was like, okay, there's something to this. And I decided to actually stay after my yoga teacher training and do my Reiki training in Bali while I was still there. Yeah. So again, it was just kind of, I think a lot of these practices, you have to be open to receiving them. And that's for anything, because if you're not open to, even if you're not open to advice, it's not going to help you.
Right.
So you have to be open to receiving these different modalities of healing. But that is Reiki.
Well, thank you for sharing. I kind of knew, but I know there might be somebody who's watching or who will watch later who doesn't know, but I've just never actually done it. So we need to talk about that, because I would love to have. I know you, I trust you. I'd like to have you do that with. So Ayurveda, what is it? And what was it that made you decide to use that as a new form of medicine or healing modality to add to your repertoire?
So Ayurveda, it means Ayur means science, and Veda means life. So it's basically the science of life, and it's the sister science to yoga. And again, it started with the same Vedic lineage who started yoga, the same sages, and that was the leading medicine in ancient India, since 5,000 years. And Ayurveda is based off the principles of that we are all made up of the 5 elements of the universe. So that's earth, fire, wind, water, and space, right? But we all have what's called a prakriti, which is what you're born with. Okay. And your prakriti is going to be one of three doshas. So the main doshas are vata, which is made up of air and space, pitta, which is fire and water, and then kapha, which is earth and water. Okay. And so typically people fall into one of those three, but it gets complicated because a lot of people are both. Like I am pitta, mainly pitta and some kapha, right? And it has to do with many things. So you think of the characteristics of air and space. Air and space is what? It's thin, it's cold, it's dry, it's rough, it's hard. And so you think of those characteristics in a person. So typically people who are vata are the people who are like naturally skinny, pointy, sharp features, right? Usually thin, brittle hair, dry skin. And then they have tendency for issues that are drying, like dry eyes, constipation, a lot of air, bloating. They are spacey, right? So they're the type of people who are kind of like flighty in the air. They suffer from insomnia, anxiety. Those are their tendencies, right? Their tendencies
Right.
for anxiety and insomnia. So you can probably think of someone who's like that skinny and fuzzy and like, right? Right. So, so that's a vata. And then a pitta person. So fire and water is what? Spicy. It's hot, steamy, right? So those people are usually more medium frame, maybe more on the muscular side. They are very direct. They are usually have a sharp tongue. They get hangry, but they are they usually will have like a ruddiness or redness to their skin, prone to acne, prone to inflammation, like joints problems, things like that, eye issues, heartburn, things like that. More hot, you know, like diarrhea, things like that. So that's pitta. And then we have kapha, which is earth and water, which is what? Dense, heavy. Think of mud. So it's cool, it's heavy, it's dense, right? And so kapha people are those who tend to be on the bigger side naturally. And they usually have a very soft and kind of like a joyful personality, more easygoing, but they do have a tendency towards lack of motivation sometimes. Like it takes them a while to get motivated. Once they get motivated, they're going, but sometimes it's like that they just can't get it going. They also have problems with sluggishness of the digestion. So again, constipation, but a different type of constipation. It's not hard and dry like vata, is more sticky, like sluggish. They tend to gain weight easily. They tend to have tendency towards hyperthyroidism or diabetes, fibroids, tumors. They usually have really beautiful, like glowing skin, rosy complexion, thicker, fuller hair. So these are just sort of like the main characteristics. And again, people are usually a blend of those. And so what's important about understanding your dosha is that there are lifestyle habits that you should follow according to your dosha and diet. So it breaks all the way down to like spices that you should or should not be, fruits, nuts or no nuts. And I love this because, in this society right now, it's all like a one catch all, like go keto, go paleo, go vegan, go blah, blah, blah. You should eat avocado toast. You could have, this is healthy. Bananas are healthy. This is healthy. And so people do all these things and they're like, well, I'm still not healthy. And it's because if you are kapha, right, you're already thick and sweet and kind of dense. Do you think that eating an avocado is a good idea? Do you think that eating a banana is a good idea? No, because in Ayurveda, like breeds more like.
Gotcha.
Right? So if you are the kapha type, you would benefit from lighter foods. The kapha people really are the only people we do say that salads are okay, because salads are really not great. And it's funny because it's always the vata people, the little skinny girls like in like spin class. who are the ones running to get the kale salad. I'm like, girl, you do not need a kale salad. You're already dry and cold and rough, right? Last thing you need to eat you a sweet potato or something
Right.
warm, something nourishing. You need some soup, you need something hearty and like with oleation in it. So it's just interesting when you find these tendencies, when you know this and you know what your tendencies are, you can kind of steer away from it. Like I know I'm mainly pitta. So in the summer, I have to stay away from spicy foods. I love spicy food. I put
Mhm.
sriracha on everything. I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
I like to play tennis, when it's 90 degrees. But I notice when that happens, my BO gets worse. I get more
Mhm.
irritable. I get acne, right? All these things start to happen. So I'm like, okay, I got to chill out. I got to drink my peppermint tea. I got to, drink my aloe. I got to, I have to do certain things. I got to stay away from this and that. And it keeps me more in balance. So it's a whole very interesting and very intricate science about
Sounds
what
like
to
it.
do for your dosha and for your imbalance, because you could be kapha with a vata imbalance. So I got to treat your imbalance first and then get you back to what's to maintain your dosha. And it goes all the way down to certain yoga poses, certain meditations, like that's for each imbalance or each dosha. So yeah, it was a 3-year master's program because we
Wow.
had a lot to
It's a
learn.
lot. Sounds like a lot,
Yeah,
but I
it's a lot.
mean,
It's a lot, but it's a very beautiful practice. Like I said, it's been going on for 5,000 years. And I think it's a good complementary practice to, Western medicine, because the reason why I did the program that I did, because it's the only one in the United States that's a combination Ayurveda and integrative medicine,
okay.
right? So integrative medicine is obviously integrating both Eastern and Western medicine together because, when I was in Western medicine, I saw like the missing link that was going on in Western medicine. Western medicine is see, diagnose, treat, right? I mean, what was the last time your doctor was like, well, how are you feeling? And when did this start? And what were you feeling when this started? And blah, blah, blah. And how's your
Mhm.
digestion? And are you pooping 3 times a day? Like they don't, how are you sleeping? Like all these things. So, integrative medicine is the link that kind of brings these two together, because I don't think you can just do all Eastern medicine and Western medicine is missing so much. So I think the two of them together, you can treat the whole person, which I think is what's been missing in our healthcare system. And I'm so happy to see that it's slowly starting to move towards a holistic approach to treating
Definitely.
people. I think Western medicine is starting to understand these, what were once believed esoteric forms of healing, actually have a lot of validity. And they're using a lot more. Like they have Reiki in hospitals now. Like they're doing
Wow.
Reiki with, post-surgical patients and chemotherapy patients. So they're actually starting to, beginning to embrace other forms of healing within Western medicine. I think the two together is the most powerful way to address, the illnesses that are going through our country. It's all based from food, right? So we don't, you know, so much can do. Like I have some Ayurveda clients who I just have them do a few things. Stop drinking anything cold, right? No ice in your, everything you should drink should be warm temperature or warm, right? Because if you're drinking anything cold, just imagine, so your digestive fire is called your agni, right? It's a fire. It's burning to kind of digest things. And you take you're trying to eat your food and then you dump some cold iced tea on top of it. What does it do to your fire? Right. And then you
That's
expect your body to be able to digest the food properly. And it doesn't. That's why a lot of times you'll come out, you eat and you feel all bloated and distended and, not feeling good. You stopped your digestion process. Right. So it's just
mm,
small things. I'll say, like, just eliminate everything cold, sip on warm water or warm tea throughout the day. Maybe start off the morning with warm lemon honey water every morning to kind of get things going, and
my
maybe
mom
add,
will love hearing that. That's her
yeah,
thing.
right? And then they come back a couple weeks later, like, oh my God, I finally had, 2 bowel movements. I didn't feel so bloated throughout the day. And I'm like, yeah, and we didn't even change your diet yet. We just started with that.
Right. And it's
Right.
simple, because earlier today I had an opportunity to talk to someone who has a program that helps people get out of medical debt, right? And we just think about all of the bills and things like that, and that people end up in the hospital or whatever the case may be. And oftentimes I will say, if they say doing something healthy is expensive, it's like, well, either you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later.
Right.
So if we can find ways, that's what I like about what you're doing, because if we can find ways, and once again, being open, and this is why I had you here, because a lot of times people they don't know, or they have some misconception of what yoga is, what Reiki is, what, all these different healing modalities are. They don't know, so they automatically reject it.
Right.
But there are things out there that can really help us if we just have an open mind. It doesn't mean you throw everything else away, but if it's something that can supplement, what you have going on, whether it's to, lessen your diabetes or, whatever it is that's going on, to have some options, to not always have to run to a pill per se.
Right. And again, and I can tell you, the pills aren't curing anything. Like, there's never been a person who was cured of diabetes ever. You know what I mean? Like, the medicines that you get from diabetes, they're maintaining your disease. They're not getting rid of the disease. Or high blood pressure. That's one reason why I didn't go internal medicine, because I was like, this is horrible. No one gets better. You have rheumatoid arthritis forever. You have diabetes forever. You have, and it was just coming, all right, Mrs. Jones, we're gonna alternate. We're gonna change you to this, or torvastatin, and we're going to increase it to 5 milligrams and come back to see me in 3 months. I mean, what are we doing? We're just maintaining the disease, right? Because are we telling her to, exercise? Are we telling her what is going on with her diet, or why does she have it in the first place? That's a question we never ask in Western medicine. We never ask. I don't know how we got diabetes. It's just, it comes from, my grandmother had it or whatever. And that's just how it is. But the difference in Ayurveda is you get to the root of the cause. You try to find the imbalance before it manifests, right? But you try to find the root cause of it, because if you identify the root, then you can hopefully stop it before it becomes something. But Western medicine, we wait till it happens. And then we're like, oh, let me give you all these drugs to make you feel better. But we're not healing you.
Right.
We're pacifying the disease. We're not healing you. So it's that's what, to me, what just struck me. I was like, wow, like, this is so different, a different way to think about, the preventive side as opposed to being a reactive medicine,
Well, thank you so much for just sharing the things that you're doing. Let's see, we have a comment here.
Oh.
Yes, this is educational. Yes, that's the point. Because both my mother and my best friend say, I always learn something when I come watch your show. Every week I learn something. That's the whole point, because the whole, the thing of living well looks, feels, shows up different for everybody.
Yes.
So, in this space, we can kind of tell you what's out there and what's available. And hearing it from somebody who looks like you, you can take it or you can not take it. You can try it or not try it. But it, for me personally, it just makes me a little more open to certain things versus some guru somewhere said, and I'm like, I don't know. Do the people you work on, have hips like these? I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, that's just real. That's just real.
Yeah.
Every person might not think that way, but I know there are a lot of us that do. And then just the whole, and this is a whole nother conversation, but just the whole history that Black people have with medical systems anyway. So, being open and, the fact, whether it's, the types of things that Dr. Kaylee does, or, some people are good with the herbs and all that sort of thing, herbal medicine and things like that, just to learn, to find out what it is, to hear about it, and then you can make the decisions on your own. So
exactly.
Right. Now we are at time. However, I did ask you before we came on because
Okay.
I love the way that you do, like your meditative, calming,
Mhm.
exercises. If you could just take a few minutes and do something like that with us. We are at the middle of the week, going on the second end. Some of us got crazy days ahead of us on Thursday and Friday, and just something to kind of help us center ourselves to, be peaceful going into the rest of the week, if you don't mind.
Okay. Sure. No, we can do a little breath work. All right. So this one helps you to sort of increase your depths of your breath, right? Because I always like to say deep breathing is like little love notes to the body, right? It signals your body that it's safe, that you can relax. It turns on the parasympathetic system, gets you out of the fight or flight system. So, deep breathing. So, we'll start with just a couple of deep breaths. All right. So, you're going to relax your shoulders down. And you can either sit up tall or you can lean up against a chair if you have it. You're going to take a deep, deep breath in through your nose. And I want you to feel your ribs expand in all four directions. And then open the mouth, just exhale. Good. And again, big breath in, big breath out. One more like that. Big breath in, big breath out. Now do that same breath, but seal your lips. Breathe in through your nose. Breathe out of your nose. And again, breathe in through your nose. And breathe out of your nose. One more like that. Breathing in through your nose. Push all the air out of your nose. Now you're going to breathe in through your nose, just 1/3 of that breath, and then stop. And now breathe in 2/3 of that breath and stop. Now I want you to breathe all the way up to the top. Hold it. Push all the air out of your nose. Good. And again, breathing in 1/3. Pause. Breathing in 2/3. Pause. Breathing all the way up to the top. Push all the air out of your nose. Good. We're going to do one more like that. Breathing in 1/3. Pause. Breathing in 2/3. Pause. Breathing all the way up to the top. Push all the air out of your nose. Now take a deep, deep breath in through your nose. Hold your breath at the very top. And now try and sip in even more air than you think you can. Really filling up, hold. And then open your mouth, exhale. Softly return back to your natural breath. Maybe breathe into those spaces in your lungs, in your chest that you created a little bit more room for your breath. And then as you feel ready, you can gently blink your eyes open.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Hopefully, everyone who's here did it as well. And it's funny that, I find myself sometimes shallow breathing,
Mhm.
but exercises like that, now I feel like, okay, I can get some real breaths in instead of those shallow breaths or feeling like I'm holding my breath. Sometimes, like, why am I holding my breath?
Exactly.
Like, what's going on with that? So thank you for that. And that is just a sample of some of what you do. Yes, Cheryl is saying the breathing in part ways is difficult for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard because you normally just want to go, but yeah,
Right?
just taking in a little more air, more air. Yes, so we should
Because
practice
we
that.
live, unfortunately, we live in that sympathetic fight or flight most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't realize that it has long-term effects on our health when we're stressed or in that stress
Mm-hmm.
mode all the time. It leads to high blood pressure, it leads to chronic anxiety, even depression, stress, heart disease, all those things. So deep breathing literally can change your physiology and change your health overall. You're
Yes.
welcome, Carol.
Yes, this was amazing. Yes, I always try to get y'all some good people. I believe in that. Some that I know personally, some that I've been following or stalking or whatever the case may be. So, yes, Dr. Kaylee, she is someone that, as I said earlier, I have had a chance to go to her studio here in the Atlanta area. And that's one thing we really didn't talk that much about. And I know we're a couple minutes after, but please tell us about Sati, where it is. It's relatively new. Is it a year yet?
Almost, almost.
Almost.
So we opened end of July 2022, and we're located in the heart of Kirkwood. So if you've ever been to Petite Marché for brunch, we're literally right up the street from them, in between the vegan bakery and the Kirkwood feed. And it's a really cute little space. As she says, she's been there, have like a nice little seating area. Where after class you can have tea, or on Wednesday nights I have my wine class. I'm not there tonight, but usually Wednesdays at 7:15, I do like a stretch class followed by wine. And that's my favorite class, not just because of the wine. And we also have sparkling water if you don't drink wine, but it's a
Right.
time for community. So as you know, for Sati, it's not just a yoga studio, but it's a place where I'm trying to build community. I want it to be a place where people just want to come and hang out and, meet new people, make connections. And so I have a lot of classes and activities where there's always some gathering. My members are spoiled because, they're like, where's the snacks? Because I usually have
Yes,
snacks.
she does always have good snacks. So
I
if you're in
usually,
the Atlanta area or ever come to the Atlanta area and you decide to go, she always has good snacks.
yes,
Yes.
I want people to sit down and gather and, yeah,
Right, because I mean that's all a part of the building of community.
yeah,
So we don't, because one of the things my mom and I were talking about earlier today is that I'm here in Atlanta. I know you, I know different people, but it's the thing of like really building community, because you can know a whole lot of people and not really have
yeah.
a community. So
Mhm.
that's just something important. So places like Sati Yoga and Wellness is a good place for that. So,
Mhm.
yes, what's this here? I've been doing wellness in my group lately. I'm all about getting healthier in every facet. Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about some of those ways tonight. And, as you continue to watch, you'll learn more and more. So,
Mhm.
thank you so much. I know I kept you about 8 minutes longer
Oh,
than I was supposed
no,
to,
it's
but and for those who are watching, sorry if we're cutting into some of your TV shows, but I just feel that this was an important conversation. As I said earlier, just to introduce you to different things to think about, to learn about, so to live the best life that you possibly can. So thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Kaylee. If you can hold on for 1 second, actually, you can stay here with me, because this
okay.
is the end of the month, and this is one of those times where I know who's coming next, but I don't have the created things to show you who's coming next.
Okay.
Tomorrow, I promise, if you're following on Brown Girl Collective on social media, I will have up who the guests are for the month of May. Got some really good folks coming up. Couple people to talk about relationships, so that's going to be interesting.
Mhm.
Someone else to talk about grief and how we, deal with grief and things of that nature. And then someone else who's going to talk to us about the things that are happening in our school systems with history and all of that, and how we can tap in, because all of this plays into our ability to live well, as parents, as grandparents, as members of the community, all of that. So that's kind of what's coming up in May, but I'll be more specific by tomorrow, I promise. So
Oh,
everyone, go
I
ahead.
forgot.
What you got?
I forgot one thing. I did make a little promo code for your
Yes,
listeners.
okay. What's that?
So it's just BGC, Black Girl
Mhm.
Collective, all caps, and they can come
Uh-huh.
for first class free.
Okay, so let me see BGC. Let me put that.
Mm-hmm.
And then just go to your website and put that in.
Mm-hmm. So whenever they try to book a class through the website, they just put that
Uh-huh.
promo code in. It'll be a free class for them.
Okay. All right, I'm putting that up. Let's see here. Make sure it went to where it was supposed to go. There we go.
Yes.
Yes, but yes, so that's exciting. Now, I know right now you don't necessarily have any online classes. Is that something planned for the future at some point?
Yes. Yes. I'm actually getting ready to transition from my software to another software. So once that happens, I'll be setting up on-demand sort of like online classes. I'm not going to do streaming virtually, just
Right,
because we are a trauma-informed studio, and a lot of my members would appreciate a camera
right. That
streaming in
makes
class.
sense.
So, but we will be making a library of classes for
That's
on.
good. That's good. That's good for me too, because even though we're in the same area, Atlanta is huge. And one day to get to her studio, it might take me 30 minutes. The next time, it might take me an hour. So
Yeah.
it'll be good to have some options for sure. So thanks again.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that code. So
Mhm.
anyone who is in the local area, please feel free to take advantage of that. So, well, that's all we've got for tonight. Thank you again to everyone who's watching live. For those who catch it in a replay, I hope that you enjoy and that you follow Dr. Kaylee online to see all the wonderful things that she has going on at the yoga studio and beyond. So we appreciate you and we look forward to seeing you again. And in the meantime, continue to live well. Now, you don't hang up, but I'm hanging up on everybody else, okay? All right, everyone, have a great evening. All right, bye-bye.